Hi, and welcome back. I'm Sheldon McLeod, and this is Thinking Out Loud here on the SaltWire Network. And it's been a while since I've been given this opportunity to work from home. I was actually had one of those Facebook memories pop up just the other day, and 3 years ago, in the midst of the lockdown, was in my home doing my job. And that's kind of become a reality for a lot of people, that ability. They call it a hybrid work environment. And it sure makes it a lot easier where you don't have to get out, take the car out and sweep it off and find parking. And that's another issue altogether. And I want to talk about that today. This happened last week. Jen Taplin covered the story at saltwire.com. It was talking about increasing property taxes, but it was also talking about doing something else, which included charging for parking on downtown streets Saturdays and Sundays. Saturdays only in Halifax and Dartmouth. And Paul MacKinnon was talking about this. He is with the Downtown Halifax Business Association. And Paul MacKinnon joins me now. Thank you again for doing this, Paul. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, Sheldon. Anytime.
You've written a letter to the editor. You're speaking out about this, and I guess what you want to say is there should be paid parking everywhere in Halifax and Dartmouth on all the streets everywhere, not just downtown.
Well, I'm not really saying that, but
I know. I'm just pulling your leg a bit.
But it's interesting, though, because I think that this council decision to institute paid parking on Saturdays, there was a couple of reasons given for it. One of them was, well, we want to discourage people from taking their cars and using other modes of transportation, and we want to raise revenue. And if those are actually the goals of council, which I'm sure they are to a certain extent, they could do that. There's other things they could do besides just sticking it to downtown. And I think that's kind of the perception that we have, is they needed a bit more money, and they are couching it in some of these other arguments, but they're not taking big steps to really raise more revenues or to really try and change people's driving patterns. They're just making it a little bit tougher and a little bit more expensive to come downtown, but nowhere else.
And they're saying about $538,000 in revenue if they institute this policy change. Obviously, it costs money to run a municipality, but you're saying that should not be the place that they're looking?
It's not the place they should be looking, and certainly it's not the place they should be looking right now. I mean, downtown, I think, as a lot of people know, we've come through a pretty tough time. Everyone has these past couple of years, but downtown, which was so dependent on that office market, people coming in working Monday to Friday, right? A lot of that group has disappeared. They're working from home, and again, that's fine, but it's a transition period. So, our businesses downtown have lost a big part of their market and have become more and more dependent on people that do come on Saturdays. And so now suddenly the municipality is saying, well, we can make a little bit of money off those people that come and park on the street on Saturdays. So let's do that. So that's kind of a cynical take on it, but really the businesses that we're talking to, and I know have been writing to council, it kind of feels like they're being kicked a little bit while they're down. The other piece I'd mention too is it's not just about more money that customers will have to pay, but we've got staff as well. We've got a very competitive staffing market for restaurants, and a lot of those people that worked on Saturday shifts, they could actually park for free on Saturdays and Sundays. Suddenly that's disappearing. So maybe that job, at a restaurant that's not downtown is looking a bit more attractive. So it's really kind of it's hurting the businesses downtown potentially in a couple of different ways, and we just think now is not the time to do this.
So if there's a stick and a carrot saying we want more people to use transit, I know I spoke with someone with the transit union who says it's tough right now. They've had to reduce runs and because of the challenges of finding drivers. So the service is being reduced, yet here we are looking at ways to try and encourage more people to take transit. It sounds like there's a lot going on right now that has business owners and others concerned about the numbers of people downtown. Are you still tracking how many people are walking downtown?
We do track that on a regular basis. So again, this change hasn't come into place, but one of the things that we've talked to council about since they made this decision, which was a very close vote, was to say, we're going to be tracking this over the next little while because this is being done with the theory that it's not going to impact visitation. So of course we want to measure that. So we'll go back to them in 6 months' time, a year's time, and say, either this has made a difference or it hasn't made a difference, and hopefully they'd be willing to revisit this if in fact they find it's been a negative impact. But of course, that doesn't help the businesses over the next 12 months that will be suffering through this. So it's certainly not it's not ideal for the businesses downtown, and hopefully it won't have a huge negative impact, but it certainly could.
What do you make of that Spring Garden Road experiment that had to be canceled and now is being pushed down the road? Here's another provision that was brought forward by elected representatives, as you point out, I think a 9-8 vote in favor of instituting paid parking in Halifax and Dartmouth on Saturdays. What does this say to you about consultation? What does this say about the connection with the business community? Because some will say, it's tough for everyone right now, so maybe this isn't as big a deal as Paul says.
Well, one of the conversation pieces at council was a number of councillors saying, we need to work more closely with the business community, and we're experiencing all sorts of different growth challenges with the municipality. But I think there is a great opportunity. We've got a brand new CAO at City Hall, a new city manager, Kathy O'Toole, and we've reached out to her collectively as all the business commissions in Halifax and said, we'd love to meet with you sooner rather than later. And our number one priority we've identified is we want to actually improve the relationship that we have with City Hall at the staff level. Council level is a different matter, and we have a great relationship with the mayor and other councillors, but we really think it needs strengthening at the staff level. And I think what it really means is working on a lot of these challenges in a much more cooperative way than I think what we've seen in the past.
Now, you're invested in this. This is your job. And you point out in your letter to the editor that neither the federal nor provincial budgets talk specifically or explicitly about downtowns. Tell me more.
Yeah, I think ignoring downtown to our peril is certainly not something that only happens at a city hall. We see it. We've seen it repeatedly over the decades with provincial governments that always want to be not seen to be too pro-Halifax and certainly too pro-downtown. We're seeing that with our current government, but frankly, we've seen that with governments of all political parties over the years. And at the federal level, a lot of people forget that Canada, 85% of Canadians live in cities. Cities are very important to Canada's economy. Downtowns are very important. It's actually where a lot of the power base is politically for our federal government. And yet they too seem to be a level of government that doesn't really want to talk about downtowns, doesn't want to deal with the complex and comprehensive challenges that downtowns have. They kind of approach things kind of piecemeal. And so we're trying to build that relationship with the federal government, the provincial government, and the city government. Not that we have all the answers, but we do feel that there's a cooperative spirit that perhaps isn't existing the same way that it did at the height of the pandemic. And so we'd like to rebuild that with all three levels. We think we've got some great ideas that we can bring to the table.
Some of the comments in that story from council included the mayor saying, the restaurant industry is taking a hit. Yes. There was also a comment that, for the most part, there is this desire to try to make cities more walkable, more livable, more amenable to people who don't have cars, less car-centric. So how do we square all that when we're talking climate change and we're talking economic development? There's that argument again, economy versus ecology.
Yeah, exactly. And it is complicated. It does all have to work together as much as possible. I think when we're talking about on-street parking, what we're really talking about is customer parking. And so our perspective is, we have to give customers have a choice. They can either hop in the car, they can take the bus if the transit service is working, they can hop on a bike if they live close, they can use an e-scooter or an e-bike. There are different options, and we want to make sure those are all available. But it's tough to say to customers, hey, you've got to hop on the bus to come downtown, but feel free to take your car to the malls or Bayers Lake or whatever. I think that the bigger shift really is around the commuting public, right? People that are coming downtown on a regular basis to work. We really want to encourage them to get onto transit and look at other modes. And when you look at other cities, larger cities, frankly, that have paid parking on Saturdays, you go to Toronto, you pay on Saturday, you go to Montreal, but those cities both have really good transit systems, and you've got other options. I think what we're hearing from customers is, I've got to take my car down to work on Saturday or to shop on Saturday because there's not really viable options. So, we've got to fix our transit system, quite frankly. We've got to improve those micromobility pieces. We've got to make investments in downtown to make it more people and pedestrian friendly. We've got to do all those things. But this is kind of putting the cart before the horse. We're putting another cost onto downtown customers. What that's going to do is simply ensure that they go somewhere else rather than downtown. So let's focus on some of those other investments. And we have to do it all at once, which is tough, but that's what we elect our governments to do.
Parkades are open on the weekend. People could go there. I'm not saying that it'd be cheaper option, but it is an option now. How many times have you heard people say there's just no parking downtown, Paul?
It's a huge public perception challenge for us. We hear it all the time. The good news is there was a recent study that HRM did a couple of weeks ago, and it was a parking demand study. So two pieces of good news came out of that. One is that there's almost 9,000 parking spaces in downtown Halifax, public parking spaces. So there never should be a case where someone says, I can't find a place to park downtown. That includes parking lots as well as on street, and that doesn't include the Spring Garden area. There's another couple thousand there. So we do believe there is adequate parking. The other piece of that study was showing how much available parking there is. So when you come downtown, how many times do you need to circle the block to find a spot? And what they found for on-street parking is, generally speaking, about 25% of the spaces are available. Right, so the availability is there. There is enough parking. The perception persists. So those are related, but a bit of a separate issue than the payment piece. So that's a bit of good news, and we want to get that message out as much as possible. As yes, you have to pay now. You have to pay 6 days a week, but the good news is you will find parking, and we've got all that information on our website as well. We're always looking to make sure that people have that information, because if people don't come downtown that often, they don't necessarily know about all the parkades or the places to park. So we want to make sure that we're promoting all of that.
And just to be clear, what is Paul MacKinnon's job? What is your job?
My job, I work for the businesses in downtown Halifax, all the businesses. That's every ground floor business, every office tower, and we're their voice. We do marketing, we do events, we do promotions and that type of thing. Basically, we want to bring people downtown. So when council makes decisions that makes it tougher to bring people downtown, it makes my job tougher, and then I write angry op-eds and talk to the councillors and try to get them to change their mind.
And is that going to bear fruit? Is that going to happen? Are they going to go back on this one?
It was a close vote. The only way I think they can go back on it is if they do a separate motion. But this was all part of the overall budget and locking in the budget rate, the assessment rates and the tax rates for the upcoming year. So I don't see them reopening it now. I think our best bet is to look ahead, to next year's budget or sometime in the future to say, hey, we've got some data here that shows that this really did inhibit visitation on Saturdays, and that might make them change their mind. So we'll be collecting that data and sharing it with them. And in the meantime, we've asked them for additional assistance in helping to promote downtown and available parking and all those things. And encourage them to get moving on improving our transit system.
And I am one of the folks who was a little reluctant for that app when it came along, the parking app. I'm using it reluctantly, but I am using it. Anything good to say about that, or indifferent or bad?
No, I love the hotspot parking app. I kind of liken it a bit to the pass that you have when you go across the bridge, because it kind of takes away, you do the transaction up front, and then when you're actually paying for it, whether you're driving across the bridge, you don't think about it. You just go ahead and do it. Same with the hotspot parking app. You already kind of paid your money. You're pressing a button on your phone, and it doesn't even feel like you're paying. So I'm a big fan. You can sit in your car while you do it. You can get money back if your visit is cheaper. It's actually one of the best things you do. If you park downtown with any frequency, I would encourage you to sign up for the app and use that. It makes parking way easier.
Yeah, I do it. I kind of load it like a Mac Pass as opposed to having it automatically renew, which there's a fee involved, and I'm cheap. But that's just me. Paul MacKinnon, we'll wait to see what the outcome is, how this affects or impacts, and I'm glad you're watching it, and I really appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you, Sheldon.